This is the Chris Stigall Show podcast.
Okay, guys, let's just rip. And Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall. Chris, thanks for being with me tonight.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall.
Now, he puts the broad in broadband. It's Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
It's Friday, the 22nd day of September. Thanks so much for downloading the Chris Stigall Show podcast. Coming up today, we will get to the bottom, maybe not really the bottom, but certainly get some more clarification, perhaps, from a military expert on this F-35 that just went missing. If you didn't hear the hilarious audio of the guy, the eyewitness, ear witness, he overheard this jet crash near his home. I mean, what could have been terribly serious, of course, is this multi-million-dollar jet, hundreds of millions of dollars in value, which was abandoned by its pilot and went on to fly for some time by itself, crashed in a field and didn't kill anybody, thank goodness, but it really could have. So we talked with Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg about that, and wait until you hear the news report of the ear witness / eyewitness in South Carolina. The guy's a stitch. He's gone viral for his play-by-play of what he heard and witnessed while he was at his home. So we'll get into that. John Fetterman continues to try to make himself out to be some sort of sympathetic figure, and it just drives me insane. I mean, this guy, Pennsylvania has birthed some of the most radical garbage, swallowing this nation whole, and as a state that I have called home for the better part of the last decade and more, it makes me sick because I know the great people there, and I know how historically important and significant and culturally, Pennsylvania is full of people that are every bit as conservative and hardworking and principled as any that you'd find in any other red Midwestern state in the country. But these radical wackos that continue to take high-ranking positions and take the microphone on the national stage, it makes you sick. So we'll get into some of that today. Also, some breaking news this morning. Bob Menendez of New Jersey, the United States Senator, lovingly call him Bob Red Light Menendez, because if you remember, he was already indicted previously for perhaps helping a eye doctor friend of his bilk Medicare and Medicaid of lots and lots of money. It was alleged to have gone down to the islands where he procured the company of some young ladies. I'll just leave it at that. Anyway, hung jury ultimately let him skate. Well, not this time. The walls have closed in on old Bobby Red Light Menendez, and this time, from the Washington Post this morning, Senator Menendez and wife indicted on bribery offenses 6 years after jury deadlocked on another corruption charge. Menendez, longtime Democrat senator, and wife allegedly accepted hundreds of thousands of dollars of bribes from New Jersey business executives in exchange for using the senator's power and influence to help them, according to the federal indictment. Then there's a tweet from Citizen Free Press. Bob Menendez indicted on bribery charges over $480,000 in cash, much of it stuffed into envelopes and hidden in clothing, closets, and a safe discovered in his home. Ooh. Now, it is important to remember that Bob Menendez is also a guy who is famous for getting crossways with Barack Obama. And while I think he's dirty and corrupt for sure, it's just interesting to me. Democrats don't fall. Democrats are never punished. So to see them coming at Menendez again, and this time making sure it sticks and making sure it counts with cash and gold and all of this stuff. Menendez was very against Obama opening trade and traveling to Cuba. Menendez was always very, very against Iran and giving money, the pallets and pallets of cash that Obama did. Menendez was called a frenemy of Barack Obama's in the United States Senate. So, my working theory here is, of course, as you know, that Barack Obama is still running this government. He's still out there agitating for the UAW. He's out there agitating and celebrating the takeover of the election process by executive fiat in Pennsylvania. He's back, and he's very active again. And so I don't know. I'm not saying that Bob Menendez isn't a corrupt, guilty guy, but I think a lot of Democrats are. But for some reason, this guy's uniquely targeted by the bowling alley waitress, this Husks DOJ, That tells me he is a marked man by Barack Obama. Also, one other bit of quick news. You guys in North Carolina, congratulations. The governor of North Carolina just signed a budget today, which includes in it universal school choice. That makes North Carolina the 10th school in the country to make universal choice in school an option to its citizens. That means the money that the state of North Carolina allocates per student, the parents get to take that money, spend it either at the public school as they see fit, or they can take it and apply it to their homeschooling needs or to their Christian private school or wherever that may be. Now, the key thing about this is, in North Carolina, the governor there is a Democrat called Roy Cooper. He hates this. He was furious. But the Republicans, get this, the Republicans have a majority in North Carolina's legislature strong enough to override any veto. So they basically played their hand, a strong hand, and said, you want all this stuff that's in your budget? You'll get it, but we want universal school choice. And so he signed it. He's not happy about it. He basically issued a statement that said, this sucks and I'm mad, but it's the best deal I could get. So I'm looking at you states that have Republican legislatures, super majorities. There's no excuse. This can be done even with a Democrat governor or a squish Republican governor. Legislatures can push their weight, throw their weight around and get it done. It can happen. So congratulations, you guys in North Carolina, now the 10th state in the union to offer universal school choice, saving students and letting the money, the taxpayer money, go to the student, not the system. Hallelujah and amen. That's a great way to start this Friday, because from here it's only going to irritate you, I'll warn you. John Ruhlman will not irritate you, though. He's going to help you. John Ruhlman wants to save you money on your health insurance costs. In fact, I have a personal friend or two, as I've told you before, that has reached out to John Ruhlman, who's saved them big-time money, so much so that other friends have just recently reached out and said, I'm now going to be shopping for healthcare costs, too. Can I get John's number? And can you drop a name for me? Of course, not that John wouldn't help you whether I know you or not. That's not the point. John wants everybody to call him. He's got a network of 80 different private health insurers out there that he works with. You can watch my conversation with him at chrisstigall.com so you can get a sense of who he is yourself. But what I guarantee you is he's going to save you at least 30 to 60% on your private sector health insurance costs, and care will never be compromised. In fact, what he finds is a lot of times people think, I'm good, I've got enough health insurance, when in fact you don't, and it's not going to cover you if, heaven forbid, you really need it. So you younger people, if you don't have health insurance or you're not really sure about your health insurance, give John and his people a call at usmedicalplan.com or 877-410-4321 and just vet what you have right now so that he can tell you, yeah, you know what, this is not very solid stuff. You get hurt and you're hospitalized, like, can you pay your bills? There's insurance plans out there for people that'll happen. There are insurance plans to cover your kids, and put you on a separate plan that's less expensive, so not everybody is paying some inflated rate. I mean, you don't know the money you can save. You don't know the coverage you can get until you talk to an expert. John handles everything, so it's not some huge bureaucratic mess you've got to sort out yourself. Let him help. usmedicalplan.com or 877-410-4321. The House GOP, Speaker Kevin McCarthy, suffers yet another stinging defeat, says Politico, as a handful of conservatives tanked a key vote that was supposed to signal the way out of days of intra-party bickering. GOP hardliners blockaded the floor for a second time in 3 days, leaving McCarthy unable to call the party's own defense spending bill to the floor. This time, though, it came as a shock to many GOP leaders who believed they won over enough holdouts to finally bring up the Pentagon funding bill. Marjorie Taylor Greene was one of those holdouts. We're going to have Keith Kellogg on the show to talk about this in just a little while, by the way. She flipped her vote on advancing the Pentagon appropriations bill, citing Ukraine aid as the reason for her no vote. She had voted yes earlier on a rule which governs debate on a bill and let the chamber proceed to vote on legislation, but the procedural vote failed when McCarthy brought it back up. Greene was one of 5 conservatives to vote no. She wrote, "Our country is being invaded by thousands every damn day. Our Department of Defense does nothing. Our defense bill should not fund our DOD for blood money for the Ukraine war. That's why I'm a no." By the way, this came on the same day that Joe Biden has just pledged another, what was the number? It's all stupid money now. It doesn't even matter. So several hundred million or $1 billion in new Ukraine funding. I mean,
I thought it was 25 mil or so is the latest.
or maybe the Axios story had the total. I just saw the headline. It was something like he pledged another. I had it here. No. Sorry. Yeah, here it is. Biden announces $325 million in Ukraine aid during Zelensky visit. $325 million. Just another. What's $325 million amongst friends? We just keep throwing money at the guy. He shows up. We throw millions and billions at the guy. Marjorie Taylor Greene, correct to say you want me to sign off on a defense spending bill? We're legalizing hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans with the stroke of a pen, and we're shoveling billions of dollars into Ukraine. And we're talking about our defense spending bill? The difference in the Republican voices today over just Ukraine spending alone. Before I get into what the Republicans had to say about it, let me play just some of the Biden administration. Just talking about shoveling endless money into Ukraine. Jake Sullivan, Biden's national security advisor on Ukraine, pressed on how much more money are we going to give these people? Another $325 million? How much more? Here's what Sullivan had to say.
First, with regards to the United States' commitment to Ukraine, there are 26 Republican lawmakers, including 6 senators, a small minority, as you mentioned before, who sent a letter to the OMB director saying that they were unaware of just how much the administration has spent thus far in support of Ukraine. They know how much was appropriated, obviously. They don't know how much has been spent thus far. Do you have a general figure you can give us?
I'm not going to stand here and give a precise figure. What I will tell you is that we have supplied to the Congress every dollar that has been obligated. So if they are unaware, it's because they are not looking at the reports that we are submitting to the Hill. And
yeah. Okay, I'm not sure what I'm looking at here. Give me the next one.
What are you telling congressional leaders about how much more aid is needed to ensure Ukraine can win the war, not just sustain the war? And what timeline are you sharing with them?
Well, we put forward a proposal. We've actually laid out in some detail every element of assistance that we believe is necessary to get us to the end of this year. And then we have begun talking to them about what next year looks like as well. But that's in military support, economic support, humanitarian, energy assistance, and so forth. War is inherently unpredictable, of course. So I can't look you in the eye, and I certainly can't look them in the eye and predict exactly what's going to happen on exactly what timetable. And therefore, we need to have a degree of flexibility and adaptability in our approach, as we have since the beginning of this conflict.
Yeah, one of the quotes he'd given earlier in this press conference was, there's not a single dollar amount necessary for all time, but we need to keep funding going. And then he goes on to say, war is inherently unpredictable. So I can't look you in the eye and predict what's going to happen. And then he's pressed again. Well, how much, Jake? Number 14.
First, with regards to the United States' commitment to Ukraine, there are 26 Republican lawmakers, including 6 senators, a small minority, as you mentioned before, who sent a letter to the OMB director saying that they were unaware of just how much the administration has spent thus far in support of Ukraine.
Okay, no, sorry, that was the one we played already, so I'm not sure. I'm a little lost here. I thought we had 3 from Sullivan. But anyway, he says, I'm not going to give you a precise figure. Can't do it. Not going to give you a precise figure. Just keep spending it. John Kirby was asked this question. This is number 1315, Fast Eddie.
One of the points that J.D. Vance raises is that it's not clear what the exit strategy is. So can you speak to that point, to that concern? What's the strategy? What's the exit plan here for the U.S.?
Well, again, I'm not exactly clear what the senator's referring to. Normally, when you talk about exit strategy, you're talking about getting American troops out of a war zone, that kind of thing. It's important to remember that we don't have American troops in Ukraine. Ukrainians are on their soil, and they're fighting for every inch of it. So I don't think they plan on going anywhere.
Military aid. We are providing the military aid and obviously financial aid.
They aren't planning on going anywhere. And the United States is committed to supporting Ukraine for as long as it takes to succeed on the battlefield. So if by exit strategy he's talking about an end of the war, I'd offer this. Mr. Putin could end it today if he just pulled his troops out of Ukraine where they don't belong.
Yeah, as long as it takes. That's all they keep saying. We don't have physical presence there, so long as we don't have physical presence there, we'll just continue to shovel money at them as long as it takes. So now let's go to the Republicans, because this is something that Marjorie Taylor Greene, for instance, and some Republicans who on the defense appropriations bill yesterday, they said, we're not going to further this as long as we continue to endlessly shovel money at Ukraine. No. Now, McCarthy throws an absolute fit about this. This is an understandable objection that Republicans have, and McCarthy is throwing an absolute tantrum as the Speaker of the House that some Republicans would actually say, can we pause this for a second and talk about what we're doing?
Frustrating in the sense that I don't understand why anybody votes against bringing the idea and having the debate. And then you got all the amendments if you don't like the bill. This is a whole new concept of individuals that just want to burn the whole place down. It doesn't work.
Yeah. Doesn't work. Just individuals that want to burn the whole place down. You mean ask questions. Steward taxpayers' funds responsibly. Is that what you mean? Rand Paul on with Maria Bartiromo.
There's also this incredible story about an American journalist, Gonzalo Lira. He's reportedly right now in prison in Ukraine on allegations of spreading Russian propaganda. I don't understand this, that Joe Biden could approve $113 billion of money to Ukraine, and yet he has not tried to get this American journalist out of prison there. How is that possible?
It's even worse than that, Maria. They've canceled the elections. What kind of democracy has no election? So next year, Zelensky said he's not going to have an election because it would be inconvenient during the war and would be expensive. Well, the thing is, if you don't have elections, why in the world would we be supporting a country that's not a democracy? They've banned the political parties. They've invaded churches. They've arrested priests. So, no, it isn't a democracy. It's a corrupt regime. And are the Russians any better? No, the Russians are worse. But at the same time, we don't always have to pick some side to be on. But the ultimate reason I'm against this is we don't have the money. And when we borrow more money, it leads to more inflation, leads to more likelihood of recession in our country. And so we just can't keep doing it.
Right. And that's right there. If ever there were an illustration of the divide in the Republican Party, it is California Kevin, the Speaker of the House, throwing a hissy fit that he can't get a rubber stamp defense appropriations bill passed, while Rand Paul appropriately points out, Ukraine is not exactly on the up and up. And what is our end goal here? I mean, even members of the media, left-wing members of the media are like, what is our goal here? As much as it takes, as long as it takes, answers the White House. And this is an acceptable answer, apparently, to a lot of Republicans on Capitol Hill, too. It's very frustrating. The term uniparty is used a lot, I understand. Do I think all is lost? I don't. But I think that I continue to come back to what I know is sort of obvious and easy. Donald Trump is the disruptive force to all of it. Donald Trump is the thing that all of these people almost universally hate. And it's why I just, on an emotional level, not talking politics, but on an emotional level, it's why I tend to favor Donald Trump. Because these people so disgust me, and they have such contempt and disdain for you, that if I feel they have that much contempt and disdain for him, it is the old cliche. It isn't about him, it's about you and me. He's just in the way. This apparatus known as Washington, this uniparty, there's not much difference between them these days, I'm sorry to say. I didn't used to believe that, but I do now. And there are these outliers like Rand Paul who highlight that there used to be robust, healthy skepticism and opposition. And you listen to somebody like California Kevin and you realize that's the Republican Speaker of the House who wants to, they're hosting Vladimir Zelensky like he's some great patriot. He's not. Rand Paul reminds us he's a very corrupt guy. And yet we keep shoveling billions to him. It doesn't make sense to most voters. And if most voters were privy to that information, I think they'd agree. That's another huge part of it. You can't excuse media in this country. The low information voter is a huge problem. And when they do get information, they get it from, online aggregate news sites that aren't telling them the full story. And many, by the way, websites and online vessels like Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, where they ban conservatives from speaking. No, it's a challenging time. I don't want to say I'm hopeless. It is a challenging time, full of a lot of new challenges. I still believe tens of millions of voters who don't participate would vote with us if engaged and properly informed. It's going to take work. It's just going to take work. Hard work. Democrats work harder than we do. They just do. When it comes to politics, Democrats outwork us. They always have, because we concentrate on actual work and the actual economy and actually raising our families. They concentrate on advancing their politics. That's the Democrat Party. That's their existence. It's never been our existence. And sadly, we're going to have at least a branch of us where our lives and our existences are going to be waking up every day figuring out how we can battle it back. We don't have that apparatus. We're not wired that way. We think election day is coming. We'll start buckling down in October. They're thinking about it 365 every single year. I was just talking to my buddy Jason Perrette. He is at Eagle Wealth Planning, the financial advisor there, great sponsor of this show. We ran into each other the other day, as a matter of fact, and I said, my son is sitting on some cash now. He's got a job, and he's been working really hard, and he's saving up his money, and he's got a nice little stockpile already, I must say. And I said, as a junior in high school, is it too early to start talking about this? He said, no, send them to me. So my son and I are going to sit down with Jason, and he's going to put my son on a financial path and really teach him how to build and grow his wealth and save and preserve and make that money go to work for him. I'm excited for a proper financial education for my son. It was one I did not have, quite frankly. And so Jason's entire existence at Eagle Wealth Planning, I had this great conversation with him. The full conversation's on my website right now, chrisstigall.com. It's like a half an hour. I asked Jason all kinds of financial questions so you can get a sense of who the guy is. But I talked to them about when you call him up and you have a financial question like I had about my son, will you get him? Are you going to talk to him? Here's what he had to say about that.
You don't get an 800 number. You don't press 1 for nothing. You get Jason, and I will answer every time, unless I'm in a meeting. Leave me a voicemail, I'll see that you called, and I'll call you back as soon as I get the free moment. I've got clients, I think, in 17 or 18 states currently, from East Coast to West Coast, southern to northern borders. It doesn't matter. In this age of digital, I can connect with you in really almost in any fashion. The only ones that we have I can do, but we get a little regulatory thing, is if you're overseas in some fashion, but you're a U.S. citizen.
Okay,
it is possible, but there are just some additional regulatory things that we have to deal with.
So it doesn't require me sitting in the room with you to work with you.
Absolutely not.
That's good. That's good.
Well, think about it, Chris. If you utilize an online service provider, robo advisors, or someplace that you log in, or you have just a computer taking care of your money, because that seems to be a big thing now.
Yep.
Do they have to sit in the same room or in the same town as you?
Right.
Absolutely not. But the one thing that's different between me and robo advisors or computers, etc., is I get to talk to you.
Yes.
Versus computers don't talk.
Now remember, Jason regularly revisits your goals, so he checks in with you. If you're annoyed by a financial planner who actually checks in with you and revisits and reassesses your financial goals, Jason's not your guy. But give him a call, 816-394-8117, 816-394-8117. He's Jason Perrette, financial advisor, Eagle Wealth Planning. Jason at eaglewealthplanning.com. He's linked at my website, chrisstigall.com. The full video of our conversation is there, too. Securities and advisory services offered through Cetera Advisors, LLC, member FINRA SIPC, a broker-dealer and a registered investment advisor. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity.
Randolph White retired from his job at the paper mill in Georgetown 10 years ago. He lives in this house with his wife in a very rural area of Williamsburg County.
Well, it's nice and quiet and peaceful. And I don't have to worry about people close up tight. I like space.
He loves living about 2 miles away from where he grew up. Normally it's pretty quiet, but on Sunday afternoon,
I was in the bathroom taking a shave.
Easy.
And I heard a screeching, between a screech and a whistle. I said, what in the world is this? And I heard a boom. Then my whole house shook.
White says he didn't realize it was a plane at the time, so he didn't call anybody.
The first thought came to me, I said, must be a meteorite coming out of space or something. And I said, well, if the airplane, it needed to be reported. That thing was flying just too low. So yesterday evening, I said...
So there you go. That is the eyewitness account. Better give that to me again, Fast Eddie. Zero in on that. That is the man closest to the crash site recalling what he heard moments before the F-35 crashed. Eyewitness. There in South Carolina. One more time. Could we get that once more?
Saw that between a screech and a whistle. I said, what in the world is this?
Let me see if Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, who's been around a lot of military hardware in his career, does that sound about right? Is that how you describe the almost crashing of an F-35, General? Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Chris. Chris, thanks for having me. I thought it was pretty good. He kind of said that's how it sounds coming in. You know, Chris, I'm just amazed when you think about that crash. Well, by the way, it was only a $100 million aircraft.
Sure.
But, that was a two-ship formation. And you would think when one of the pilots punched out, and for whatever reason we don't know, that the second aircraft would have stayed alongside the F-35 to basically tell people where it was at. We basically lost the airplane. It was like, well, I don't know where it's at. There were actually some reports it was heading to Cuba, which, that was a wrong answer. But it was it's amazing. You have to just scratch your head with everything that's going on. And it's almost like, okay, this just seems to be a comedy of errors, and it's day after day, week after week, month after month, and we just seem to be getting there. But I thought it was a pretty good reenactment of what it sounded like crashing.
911 phone call. This story from AP, General. A 911 phone call from a Charleston resident reports a pilot parachuted into his backyard. 4-minute recording captures a bizarre circumstance for 3 unidentified people involved. A North Charleston resident calmly explaining that a pilot parachutes into his backyard. Pilot doesn't know what became of his F-35 jet. A puzzled dispatcher trying to make sense of it all. Resident says, we got a pilot in the house. I guess he landed in my backyard. Trying to see if we can get an ambulance. The pilot, 47, reports feeling okay after falling what he estimated was 2,000 feet. Only his back hurt, he said. Resident said the pilot looked fine. Ma'am, a military jet crashed. I'm the pilot. We need to get a rescue rolling. I'm not sure where the airplane is. It would have landed somewhere. I ejected. Now, a couple of things about this, General. You say that another jet should have been accompanying this pilot who ejected?
Well, yeah, the reports were it was a two-ship formation, Chris. So there was another ship with it. And that ship should have stayed alongside that ship because, it could have crashed into a house. It could have crashed into a church.
Yes.
It could have crashed into a shopping mall.
Town. Yeah.
And it was almost like a cavalier approach. Well, I punched out. The airplane's going somewhere. We're not sure where it was going. It was heading some direction. I mean, you look back and you go, okay, this doesn't sound really good. Either this pilot's got some problems or the training's got some problems. And of course, the airplane kept flying. So I don't know why he punched out at the time that he did it. I mean, the thing kept going for 80 to 90 miles.
That's can you help me? Yeah, I started the week I thought this was an extremely important story to me. This felt kind of Chinese spy balloon like. It feels more important than I think people are making it. It seems to me because this is, as you say, the pilot seemed like he was coherent and well, and the jet kept traveling. And more importantly, we said we lost it. Like none of those events make sense. We don't know why he ejected. We don't if the plane was fine, it kept traveling, and that we lost it and had no sense. Like I don't even know procedure. Could we talk about now an unmanned aircraft is hurtling through the sky? What's protocol if we know where it is, General? Do you suppose?
Well, Chris, I think there's actually we don't have a protocol. I think there's actually a bigger issue here. What's getting to me is there's a pattern we're starting to set up. When I see a pattern, it's a pattern of accountability. Back in the day, you'd make sure pilots would stay with their aircraft as long as they possibly could before it was going down, before you'd punch out. And that's what I mean about, there's a personal and professional accountability issue here that is starting to permeate the military force. And it goes back to, Chris, I'm just not talking about this one aircraft, but go back to Afghanistan. We're still trying to figure out where the accountability was when the incident happened at Abbey Gate, when we lost 13 great soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines during that bombing. And you go, okay, this keeps happening. Everything from ship steerage incidents to aircraft incidents to Chinese spy balloons. Well, who's going to take accountability and responsibility? Can you tell me one time in the last year that somebody's taken accountability for something bad going on in the military? I can't.
No.
And this is another example. And so I'm saying it permeates down from the very top down to a pilot in an F-35. And my question to him is, why didn't you stay with the aircraft?
Yes, and then the odd response as I read it from the Marines was, I think it was strictly the Marines, they grounded all aircraft across the board, like everywhere, internationally, domestically. They grounded all craft for 2 days to study something or other, was the report. Is that true?
Yeah, Chris, it's like a safety stand down. You stand down for it, but I think they should have had a personnel stand down. What I mean, personnel stand down is, hey, we need to talk about accountability and what really happens here. That's the message you send out there. You know, the equipment's just a piece of hardware. It's the person that's driving the hardware that's the critical piece of it. This thing's just a much flying iron. So you kind of say, okay, don't blame the airplane because it's, you know, it's basically, you know, just a piece of equipment. Talk to the pilots. What happened? What's the issue with this? Get to the bottom of it, because that's the most important piece, is the human piece of it. And that means I go across the board from top to bottom, and that's what I'm not seeing. It's sort of like, oh, we lost it. You look at this, Chris. Oh, we lost an airplane. It's only a $100 million airplane, you know, F-35, crashed somewhere. Don't worry about it. Crashed in the backyard of someplace. I mean, you know, when would the Pentagon really never even got in front of it? And they haven't. And I really look at the leadership of the military at all levels right now, and I start to ask them is, guys, you probably ought to start with accountability, personal responsibility, and get to the bottom of this, because this is just a microcosm. This is an example of what happens, just not there, but across the board. So I look at a bigger picture. I just don't look at the airplane crashing. I look at the symptomatic efforts of it, and the leadership part of it as well.
I mean, General, God forbid, I'm glad it ended the way it did, but God forbid, can we walk out for a second? And by the way, Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg with us. Could we walk out a scenario where a pilot safely ejects and calls 911, the jet flies unmanned for another 80, 90 miles, but instead crashes into, as you said, a church, a town, a neighborhood, and kills civilians? Now what are we talking about?
Well, you're absolutely right. That was you get a concern about that. It's just it happens, and it doesn't happen. And Chris, I keep going back to it. And I know I'm sounding repetitive on it, but on personal accountability and responsibility, and you have to teach that into the military, that you are responsible for this. Look, I remember back when I was in the Army side of the house, and we actually had live fire incidents where we actually had, in hard training, we had a soldier killed. Well, the accountability starts with the platoon leader, the platoon sergeant, the company commander, goes right up down the line. And you say, okay, what caused this to happen? The weapon didn't cause the death. The individual caused the death, because they're the one that pointed the weapon, fired the weapon, didn't have good fire control procedures. And it's the same thing in the military. My concern is you see this now bleeding down from the very top to the very bottom. And I'm going to stay on that because it's important. Because unless you've got personal accountability and responsibility, then everything starts to fail under you, because nobody really cares. They, look, the air crashed. You know, that happens. Don't worry about it. No, it's very, very important. Because what do we kind of explain to our young men and women in the Air Force, and where do we teach accountability?
Vladimir Zelensky went to the UN this week. He ran around Capitol Hill. He met with Biden. Simple question. I made this observation earlier in the week, and maybe this is an overly simple or maybe naive observation. I don't know. It just seems to me like the guy has a lot of time to do stuff like global confabs and meet with foreign leaders and attend meetings and pose for photo shoots. It's just strange behavior for a guy whose country is apparently being invaded and under assault from an invading nation. Maybe I don't know my history well, but I don't remember a lot of world leaders jet setting when their country was under attack. General, am I making too much of that?
Well, no, he's actually kind of smart when you think about it, Chris. You know, he's following what Willie Sutton did. You know, Willie Sutton was a great bank robber years ago. And so they asked him when he was at trial, Willie, why do you rob banks? He goes, well, that's where the money is. You know, and he comes here to the United States and comes to other places because they need the money to do that. and they've got a soft target here in the United States when we put over 120 billion into Ukraine, both militarily, economically, humanitarian assistance out there. So we're the main big money bag, and they knows that, and there's no pushback here. Nobody's really asking for accountability where the money's going. Nobody's asking for what the end game is. Nobody's saying what does it look like and how does this thing actually end long term? What is the risk profile we're looking at? Nobody's doing it. We're just handing him the money. So he's actually looking and said, okay, suckers, here's the money. Here's where we go with it. I think the big mistake we make, and I mean this administration, is they don't say, okay, what is the end game on this? And by the way, we haven't told the American people this. It's their money, and we've got the southern border wide open, and we're spending all this money. So tell me how this thing ends. So what's the good news behind this story? So,
well, can I, on that point, General, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but may I just interrupt you with John Kirby and Kristen Welker's exchange yesterday on that point, the exit strategy. Listen to this exchange, and then I'd like your response, sir.
One of the points that J.D. Vance raises is that it's not clear what the exit strategy is. So can you speak to that point, to that concern? What's the strategy? What's the exit plan here for the U.S.?
Well, again, I'm not exactly clear what the senator's referring to. Normally, when you talk about exit strategy, you're talking about getting American troops out of a war zone, that kind of thing. It's important to remember that we don't have American troops in Ukraine. Ukrainians are on their soil, and they're fighting for every inch of it. So I don't think they plan on going anywhere.
Military aid. We are providing the military aid and obviously financial aid.
They aren't planning on going anywhere. And the United States is committed to supporting Ukraine for as long as it takes to succeed on the battlefield. So if by exit strategy he's talking about an end of the war, I'd offer this. Mr. Putin could end it today if he just pulled his troops out of Ukraine where they don't belong.
I can't. There can't be a single American citizen who's satisfied with, because we don't have men and boots on the ground ourselves, we'll continue to shovel money to them as long as it takes. They keep saying that with great confidence, General, like the public stands with them in that assessment.
Yeah, and I really like Kristen Welker. I think she's really good at what she does, and she asked the admiral a good question. They ought to take away his admiral rank, And I said, look, guys, the question was a very accurate question. What is the end state? And he diverted the question. He basically did a bridge over to, well, having no U.S. troops there. No, it's an important question, because what they're doing is they're fighting the Russians. It's the largest war in Europe since the end of World War II. Over 200,000 or 300,000 soldiers on both sides have been killed. It's pretty significant. There's an escalation factor here that we have to build in, because, the Russians have a policy of escalate to de-escalate. And what does that mean? Well, that could mean the use of nuclear weapons for demonstration, small yield nuclear weapons, whatever it's going to take. And we just keep pushing it to the right, And he's right. If you're going to take American money, a lot of it, $130 billion, much, much, much more than any other nation. And I don't want to use this GDP factor. It's about the sheer dollars. And we're not protecting our own borders and what we're doing. This administration owes the American people an answer. This is what it looks like. This is what we told the Ukrainians. We're not going to give any more money until we get a good accountability. And so Kirby just deflects. I admire Welker for what she did. And I just look at Kirby, but Kirby is actually, Chris, even though he came out of the military, he's a political hack. So, that happens sometimes.
No,
and he just didn't give the right answer to the American people.
Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeted this, or posted on X, something that I thought, whatever you think of her, I thought this was, they're talking about this Pentagon funding vote in the House, and some House Republicans held it up. Kevin McCarthy's all ticked off about it. Greene was one of those who said no yesterday. And she said, our country is being invaded by thousands every damn day, and our Department of Defense does nothing. Our defense bill would not fund our DOD for blood money. Should not fund our DOD for blood money for Ukraine war, and that's why I'm a no. What did we get out of Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan? Is that a fair assessment from the Congresswoman, General?
Sure it is. And Mark Green's is a solid guy. I mean, he's seen war before. And when you think
sorry, that's Marjorie Taylor Greene. My apologies on that.
Oh, Marjorie Taylor Greene did it. Okay. And she's right as well. And both the Greens are. And the fact is, Chris, this is owed to the American people. And, it's their money. And it's almost when you come to Washington, they drink the water, they forget where that money comes from. And I think we have to explain it. We have to protect our southern border. Our southern border is wide open. And I mean, that's a national security issue in itself. And when you look at the border, just a good transition, look who's coming across. Those are young males, military-age males leaving their countries, and you go, what are they doing coming in? Now, if it's different, you could actually ask yourself a different question. What if there's just women and children? Different story. But these are males coming across the border. So I think those are good questions that have to be asked. And I think it goes back to all the policies that you're seeing with this administration. I think, look, this shows an example, and this is a radical shift of why the recruiting problems are having in the military. The Army's missed their recruiting numbers. The Navy's missed their recruiting numbers, and so is the Air Force. And they've missed them for 2 years in a row. You have to start asking yourself, okay, why are we not making numbers in the military? And why are we not answering the American people's answers on where is this money going? And there's been no accountability when it goes money to Ukraine. It's all these series of questions and answers, and it all comes back to accountability, and it all comes back to communications. Is the president and this administration communicating effectively to the American people and telling them why we're doing this? They haven't.
A friend of mine texted me yesterday, and he said, Chris, I'm just watching these people traveling, just as you said, General. He said, for people that have supposedly traveled thousands of miles, they don't look disheveled, worn out. Most of them look healthy, well-groomed, well-dressed. I'd think after, quote, walking or traveling all those miles, they'd look a little rougher than they do. I see quite a few carrying around young kids. It looks like they haven't carried them 10 feet. And he says, my assumption is somebody's paying for them to get to the border and beyond. I think we know that's probably true, right? Is that an accurate assessment? A lot of these people do not, I wouldn't say they look haggard like they've been traveling for weeks and weeks on foot, for heaven's sakes.
No, they haven't, Chris. And, I will tell you, I'll give you a quick bridge to that is I remember watching the first airload that came out of Karzai International Airport of the C-17 on the evacuations. 80% of the airplane were males. And you kind of say to yourself, wait a second, why are all these males coming into the country? And they're not refugees. There's a very clear status of what you have to qualify to be a refugee. And there's a certain number you're allowed to come in every year. It's set every year how many you can bring in as refugees. But these are people are well able-bodied males coming in. And it's almost like, okay, what are they coming into this country for? And why, it's a different story if you've got women and children, but the males are a totally different story. And I don't know why we're not putting some safeguards on it. And we're not, Chris. Anybody who says the border is secure, I'll tell you what, I got a great bridge in Brooklyn to sell them because it's just not. And anybody who's been on the border, and I've been down there, and I was down there with Vice President Pence when we toured the border just a few years ago and looked at it and said, man, this is a real problem area, and we just haven't addressed it. Not addressed it effectively, at least.
Yeah, it's so difficult to justify millions of people crossing our southern invading, and we continue to shovel billions to Ukraine. Those two things do not make sense to most Americans. They just don't. I know you understand that. I'm saying what's obvious, but it's maddening. Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, former National Security Advisor to the Trump administration, and he's with the Center for American Security at the America First Policy Institute now. General, we always appreciate your analysis and your time, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me. Have a good day.
Give me that guy again. Little Friday levity. The eyewitness to the F-35 crash in South Carolina. This is just wonderful. Guy living nearby in a field. Got the straw hat on. Live local news. Just tremendous.
And I heard a screeching. Saw that between a screech and a whistle. I said, what in the world is
this? He was taking a shave. He said, I was taking a shave. You got to be very careful. That's not a turn of phrase you hear often. I thought he was going somewhere else there for a minute on live television. I was taking a...
I was in the bathroom taking a shave, and I heard a screeching. Saw that between a screech and a whistle. I said, what in the world is this? And I heard a boom.
We've been through this before, but I think it's important to reset this table, particularly given the last week of conversation about dress code. I told you that I thought the Senate dress code thing was a bigger story than a lot of people might make it. That there had to be something more to it because Democrats don't do anything without calculating what it could mean for them and to their benefit. And my calculation was that this is but a subtle wink to fraternity house culture. If it feels good, do it. If you don't want to get dressed, you don't have to. If you don't want to work, you probably shouldn't have to. We'll make sure we get your bennies to you. Don't sweat it. We'll keep cutting the government checks. You took out some loans for student loans, and now you can't find a job that pays you anywhere close to what you owe in debt. Don't worry about it. We'll cover the debt. We'll wipe it off the books. Legalize pot everywhere we can. High, dependent, slovenly. This is what the Democrat Party wants for its constituency. They want to convey that that's okay. And to further that message, it's okay, they'll have a United States senator be its role model. The picture of slovenly, lazy, unaccomplished, do nothing, care about nothing, indifferent, bro culture is embodied in John Fetterman. I said yesterday that he is effectively the Democrats' mascot. That's what I said on social media. He is a Democrat mascot. He can, the Phillies have the Philly Fanatic swoop. The Democrats have John Fetterman. He is literally like a giant cartoonist. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if there's a smaller man inside the costume of John Fetterman. He's that cartoonishly idiotic. Now, it also happens to have been the case that he had a stroke. And so, because John Fetterman has had a stroke and rendered him incapable of communicating without reading things on a screen when people are speaking to him, he can't understand you unless he's reading what you're saying transcribed on a screen. And then, of course, we know that he can't formulate sentences on his own. Well, he's just not able. You can say no fault of his own. He had a stroke. He's been working on it. Now, also because of the stroke, Fast Eddie, remember, this is a guy who had depression, they tell us. Severe depression. And so he was sent away to Walter Reed for a time for treatment of depression, we were told. And we were told he came out and he was fine. And he had given some interviews right after that and heralded for his bravery in returning to the Senate for depression, if you remember. So if you're following along, this guy, single-handedly, all by himself, very similar, actually, to Rachel Levine, if you stop and consider it. These two Addams Family freak shows, both from Pennsylvania, have radically, fundamentally changed and are driving radical discussions nationwide about what is biological, about what is acceptable culturally. Think about that. I would argue that John Fetterman and Rachel Levine, Admiral Rachel, who's neither an admiral nor a Rachel, it's a man, it's a grown man, who now dresses up in an admiral's costume like he's a woman and calls himself Rachel. And then this giant cartoonish spectacle with the who I would say he looks like a guy who's going to change your oil, but that's disrespectful to guys who change your oil. With the stupid handlebar mustache now and the oil change T-shirt and the basketball shorts and the big clodhopper sneakers, lumbering around, hunched over, 10 feet tall, and grunting at people. This is the new mascot of the Democrat Party. And these people, I would argue, have changed the cultural discussion maybe more than any two people in recent memory in Washington, D.C. Do you know that? Have you backed away and considered that, Fast Eddie? Right out of your home state.
Chris, I hadn't. I guess it's unorthodox, but here we are. You're right.
Those two people have done more to change the cultural conversation about everything that we value as normal, traditional, biological, than any two people, I would argue, in public life have in, I don't know. I mean, this has been the most radical change in the swiftest amount of time that I can remember, courtesy mostly of those two people. Now, they both have been trotted out similarly as victims, heroes for their victimhood. Because of their oppression and because of life being so hard on them and because their existence every day is so hard, they are to be pitied and celebrated at the same time. It's quite a feat. There aren't many people and there aren't many occasions where you can point to somebody and say they are both pitiable and to be celebrated at the same time. But that's what the Democrat Party's trying with the both of them. So Fetterman gives another weepy testimony yesterday about being bullied because he's had a stroke. And I thought I'd open with this because I wanted you to understand this was making the rounds yesterday as far as news. And this is designed to make you feel sorry for him. I don't trust this guy at all, even in his condition. I think he is a stone-cold, straight-up fraud. Now, I remind you, when he was asked as an adult, grown, elected representative of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, as a senator, what do you think about the possible impeachment led by Kevin McCarthy? He starts with the schoolyard. Oh, I'm so scared you do it. Oh, he's a child. He's a small, tiny child in a giant, oafish, lumbering body. So I want you to keep that in mind. He's small, he's tiny, he's petulant, he's vicious, he's radical. Even having had the stroke, and even though he struggles to speak, do you hear me on this? I don't want you to lose who he is just because he's had a stroke and doesn't speak well. Follow? Fast Eddie, you got this? This is a really important point. Listen to me. Because he's had a stroke does not change who he is by way of his radical nature. Does everyone understand the stroke does not make him less radical politically? Hello? Is this on? I know it's Friday and it's been a long week. Does everyone understand John Fetterman is every bit as dangerous and radical politically, and just because he's had a stroke and struggles to speak, that doesn't make him a sad, pitiable person? Everybody get that?
Got it, Chris.
Okay, I just want to be real sure. Because when you hear this, you're going to go, oh, I want to bring little Johnny in and cradle him to my bosom. No. As you listen to this disgusting display, I want you to remember there's only one reason he's there, and that's voluntarily. He wants to be there. The people around him want him there. Even if you want to pity him here, all right? Even if you want to feel sorry for him. I want you to keep in mind that he is standing there doing this on his own, and the people around him saw fit to take him out of a depression clinic and shove him back in the Senate. Supposedly they've changed rules on dress in the Senate to accommodate his mental condition. This is a man who is unwell mentally. He is unwell physically. And he continues, rather than allow somebody like Josh Shapiro to fill his seat, meaning appoint someone new to fill his seat, with massive mental problems and health problems, he continues to hang tough and represent the citizens of Pennsylvania, even though, what was the stat I read? He's only been there an eighth of the time or something. He's missed more votes, I think I read, than Dianne Feinstein, and we know the condition she's in. She's like a gazillion years old. She doesn't even know where she is anymore, and I think she's been present to vote more than John Fetterman has. Is that correct? I think I read that.
I thought it was reversed. I thought the only person that has a worse record this time around was Dianne Feinstein.
Well, that was it. The metric was measured against her. Either way, it's not good. The point is, neither of these people are there to vote. And she's, 9,000 years old. So I'm going to play this, but I wanted to start by setting the table because I don't want anybody falling for this sad sack I lost my puppy routine from this galoot, this mongrel. All right, play it.
Thank you for coming. And for me, it's been a very personal issue with me. And I'm going to show this, and then I'm going to describe this to others. This is my iPhone, and this is a transcription service that allows me to fully participate in this meeting and conversations with my children and interacting with my staff. I had a stroke about 18 months ago.
We're all aware.
And I have lost my ability to fully process language.
We know.
And I like to think I was an empathetic person, truly. But until that happened, I've raised to a whole different kind of level as well. And it's profound to know, though, that I never really considered that without this kind of technology, I couldn't watch television. And I can't imagine if I didn't have this kind of a bridge to allow me to communicate with other people effectively. And, because I live in a political environment, I was ridiculed and made fun of because I wasn't able to process things sometimes or say things. So I'm so sorry that I'm sure many of you had to go through this kind of thing. You know, I was lucky that I was lucky enough to go through my life, the vast majority of that without this kind of disability that I have. But again, I can't imagine and how the challenges, and I admire, you know, everyone that has to kind of live with these kind of struggles and prevail over them. And the questions that I have is really more of an open-ended kind of question to everyone on the panel.
All right, so that's enough. So that's where he gets choked up, and that's made all kinds of news in the last 24 hours. Oh, you're supposed to feel sorry for him. This punk son of a bitch has done nothing but taunt and name call and behave and advocate for some of the most radical nonsense that's ever befallen the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and the nation. Oh, he had a stroke and can't communicate now with people. Oh, look, I'm a human being. I'm sorry the man had a stroke. I wish him well. But you know where that stops? When he decides it's more power and being in the United States Senate is more important to him than going and getting well and getting mental health treatment and being with his family. He's more interested in holding a stupid Senate seat. He's a public servant and a public official. And I'm not going to go, oh, poor John. He has trouble understanding people and has to read it on a prompter. I don't feel sorry for you. You're a radical, and you advocate radical things, and you continue to taunt and name call conservatives who oppose you. You don't respect anybody who's in your opposition. Do you? Let me quit. Serious question. Has he taunted? Has he teased? Has he name called Republicans, Fast Eddie? Has he?
Yes.
Sure he has. We got a vault full of it. He's constantly calling them jerk off, circle jerks, humping. He loves the sex references, by the way. All the time he's talking about it. He chased a black man with a gun, for God's sakes, for jogging past his home. He's constantly taunting his political opposition like a child. And like a child, now he weeps and cries and expects us to feel sorry for him because he has a disability. I don't. He's and it's you can pick it. He's either a mascot and being used, or he knows exactly what he's doing. Which is it? It's not both. So which do you think it is? Is the Democrat Party using him, or he knows exactly what he's doing? It's one of the two.
I think that the Democrat. I don't know, man. I think it's both.
I don't like him. I think he's a bad guy. I think he's a bad guy who unfortunately had a stroke and now has a disability. And I think both things can be true. Let me just disabuse you of something right now. Just because you've had a debilitating stroke doesn't mean you're a good person. You can still be a really terrible person with a disability. Yes, it's true. You can be a really terrible person and have had a disability. I get so sick and tired of them pretending he's supposed to be pitiable, someone we're supposed to feel sorry for. But that's why they keep him around. Because it works. It works on untold thousands, if not millions of people. They'll watch that. They'll read those headlines. I saw that yesterday and I started fuming. I've been champing at the bit to get back here to this microphone because I couldn't wait to talk to you about it. I saw this headline, oh, John Fetterman breaks down in testimony. Him so sad he can't speak. Oh. I don't feel remotely sorry for him. I feel sorry for his children. I feel sorry for his family. I don't feel sorry for him. The Democrat Party is exploiting and using this goon. They have debased the Senate even further than it's already been debased. They now, you know, a friend of mine made the point this week. He said, we build these beautiful, in fact, I was just talking to a colleague of mine who similarly, he said, I just took a tour of the United States Senate not too long ago. I said, oh yeah, what'd you think? In fact, I'm supposed to go to the Capitol next week and take a tour. Never done that. Never taken a guided tour of the Capitol. I'm going to do that. And maybe I'll see these Senate chambers. And this colleague of mine was describing how he toured the Senate chambers. And he said, you know, it's a huge, obviously beautiful building, the Capitol building, the grooves and the marble steps from all the many, many decades of these lawmakers walking this. They still have the spittoons on the floor. I think Kelly Johnston told us that, the Secretary of the Senate, the tradition of this place matters. You know, no cell phone use. These were hollowed halls, marble columns, beautiful wood, all these giant, beautiful. Remember, the Capitol building is sacred, don't you know? January 6th, right? The halls of democracy were breached. Our beautiful building where democracy flourishes. That's what we were told. This church, this monastery of freedom had been breached, we were told on January 6th. So we revere this building, do we not? The Capitol Dome. And what's it been reduced to? This thug, this goon, has now debased it to the point that people can just show up in a T-shirt and gym shorts to do the business. And a friend of mine made the point, he goes, well, why do we have these big, beautiful buildings? Why are we paying as taxpayers for these big, beautiful buildings, marble and columns and the whole thing? Why don't we just put them all in a warehouse? Seriously, why are we spending gazillions of dollars to keep the Capitol building operational? If they're going to dress and look like they work in a garage, cleaning it out during the weekends, then why not just put them in a big warehouse? Save us all a bunch of money. Sincere question. And that's because of John Fetterman. I thought it was a fine point. I don't know, this guy, and the trick is I have to keep myself in check because it's sort of a bait and switch. While I'm telling the truth and I stand by every word of it, the angrier I get at him, the more a lot of idiots who don't understand this stuff feel sorry for him. And then they look at guys like me getting angry and they go, that guy's getting really mean to the stroke patient. Right? That's the trick. So I have to stand here and bite my tongue while he cries. And millions of people who don't pay attention to this stuff like you and me go, oh, poor senator from Pennsylvania. I don't know who that guy is, but I feel sorry for him. And he dresses like me. And why are they being so mean to him? I like that guy. And guys like Stigall are mean to him. See the trick? It's almost damned if you do, damned if you don't. I mean, I'm not going to stop calling it out, but it raises my blood pressure to such a level. Sometimes I blow a gasket. I can't take it. That so many people are going to fall for this crap. I swear he's around to do. He is like the kicked little puppy. He's the little puppy the Democrats are keeping around, and then whenever they're falling on hard times with messaging or their popularity starts to wane, they trot out these carnival freaks like Fetterman and Rachel Levine, neither an admiral nor a Rachel, a man in a skirt. They trot these people out, and they become the national discussion. Quite a proud couple of years for Pennsylvania, what we've produced. Two of the biggest sources of degradation to the United States conversation politically that there is, both from the Keystone State. Speaking of the Keystone State, meanwhile, Taylor Swift, the pride of Berks County. Don't look now, but look what she's managed to accomplish. 35,000 new registered voters just from showing up and singing. This is also where the Democrats are very, very gifted and smart, as we know. And Josh Shapiro. Did you see Barack Obama was complimenting? All things come back to Pennsylvania. How important is this state? How important is Pennsylvania in the body politic? Barack Obama heralding Josh Shapiro this week. You know, Obama doesn't make a lot of comments, at least that I pay attention to, but the news that Obama has made making public comment this week has been supporting the UAW strikers who want like 50% more pay and to work a day less. And then he came out and supported Josh Shapiro for automatic voter registration when you get your driver's license at the DMV. Why do you think Barack Obama is particularly interested and excited about Josh Shapiro getting people automatically registered at the DMV? Taylor Swift Instagram post drove a record-breaking amount of web traffic to vote.org this week and helped the site register more than 35,000 new voters. 35,252 people newly registered to vote on Tuesday. That's a 23% jump from last year's National Voter Registration Day. There was a 115% increase in 18-year-olds registering compared to last year. And you can bet that overwhelmingly most of them, of these 35,000 new registered voters, were young women. Democrats have got their game, folks. The reason I share this with you is, make no mistake about it, the Democrats are on their game. I don't know where Ronna McDaniel is. Having surgeries or something, I guess. Do you feel it? I feel it this week. It feels like they have just flooded the zone. Taylor Swift, Josh Shapiro, Barack Obama, John Fetterman, they're all coming. It's like a full blitz.
And Chris, we have one unpaid person that is spending a lot of time here. And I don't mean to kiss up, but Scott Pressler is the only one who's saying, hey, we really need to register voters here in Pennsylvania. In the absence of all of the PA GOP, the national GOP, I mean, what is going on? The Democrats clearly have PA on lock.
Simultaneously, the Biden administration this week, as you probably heard, going to allow thousands, hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans already in the United States to live and work legally for 18 months. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that hundreds of thousands of newly legalized Venezuelans or other migrants who've come into the country illegally, who are suddenly granted temporary legal work status by the Biden administration, can vote. I'm not necessarily making that connection and leap. But when you look at Josh Shapiro unilaterally without the legislature decreeing that if you get a driver's license in Pennsylvania, you're automatically registered to vote, I'm just asking you to do the math. Just do the math. If the president of the United States can waive hundreds of thousands of illegal migrants legal to work, to get work documents to be legal to work in the United States, and at the same time, the governor of Pennsylvania, for instance, says, if you can get an ID, you're registered to vote. I'm not necessarily saying that all of these hundreds of thousands of people could go into the DMV and get an ID, but I feel like, and I lose track of all of the scheming ways in which they try to usurp the law. What's the deal on illegals or migrants or legalized migrants getting ID in places like Pennsylvania? I can't remember. There was a time where illegals were getting licenses. I mean, like, let's just be straight up clear about that. There was a huge scandal in Pennsylvania over it. Still not confident that's not happening. But what's your understanding about illegals getting driver's licenses today? I
feel like
technically that's not legal. Technically. True?
I feel like they can. I'm trying to think of the areas within Philadelphia, Norristown. I feel like they can. I can't say for certain, but
I'm trying to remember exactly how they rigged the thing. But anyway, the point is it's a perfect storm, as you understand. This is a broad picture I'm painting here for you to understand, and I know that you do. They're up to no good. And they are as super coordinated as a party as ever they've been. They are as gifted at the long game, and they're as gifted at coordination as any party. I know some people tend to dismiss them and say, government, they're not that great. I think we've had some guests here in this last week that say, I don't give the government much credit for coordination. Maybe not the government, but I give the Democrat Party a hell of a lot of credit for coordination and organization. Barack Obama, remember, is a community organizer by training. That is literally his background. His resume is nothing but organizing. And now he ostensibly runs the country again in the shadow presidency of Joe Biden. So they're out there agitating with unions. They're legalizing hundreds of thousands of illegals. They're cheering the unilateral changing of rules on voting and voter registration. All the while, their big, dumb animal called John Fetterman is crying because he has to use a machine to read. And I just want to be comfortable in my gym shorts, and I don't want people to be mean to me. What a time. My Pillow 2.0. I don't know if you are familiar with the product yet. I don't know if you've seen Mike Lindell talking about My Pillow 2.0, but I'm sleeping on it right now, and I can tell you this is amazing. He's developed a pillow that actually keeps you cool at night. Sincerely. I didn't even know that was possible. If you're somebody that runs a little warm at night, Mike has actually created a My Pillow 2.0, which is that adjustable fill that he's talked about for the last 20 years, but now a new fabric that helps regulate your body temperature through the night, which creates a lower surface temperature, and that gets you a better restful night's sleep. Now, here's the thing. If you go to MyPillow.com and you order the new MyPillow 2.0 today, you'll get another one for free just by using my name, Chris. So go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio listeners square, and enter my name, Chris, and you will get a second MyPillow 2.0 for free. My name also gets you up to 66% on everything on that website, 66% off. Robes, slippers, sheets, dog beds, my coffee. Mike has an unbelievable spate of merchandise at MyPillow.com, more than I had any idea. So if you haven't shopped MyPillow yet, I hope you'll go. I hope you'll use my name, Chris, and save big-time money on great products, which are all American made. They are warranted for 10 years. There's a 60-day money-back guarantee. All you have to do is pick up the phone and call 800-932-5056, 800-932-5056, or MyPillow.com. I just caught him a couple of days ago on the Dennis Prager show, so I know we're in good company. If Dennis likes him, I know I'm going to like him. I haven't talked with him before. Will Witt is the editor-in-chief of the Florida Standard. He has a brand new book called Do Not Comply, Taking Power Back from America's Corrupt Elite. I love it. Mr. Witt, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you so much for having me.
You betcha. I think the title probably well summarizes what we understand as your point of view here. We are dealing with an increasingly concentrated set of authoritarians, whether that's in our state capital or whether our nation's capital, I guess, depending on where you live.
Yeah, and it's about even more than just Democrats or rhino Republicans. It's about the lobbying machine. It's about the military-industrial complex. You have big pharma, you have big media, big tech, all these different entities that look to turn Americans into slaves. And so my book is about, more than just COVID. We think of Do Not Comply and we think of COVID, but it's a lot more than that. It's huge of all these people who want to keep you down. And the purpose of the book is to make people realize their individuality and that they do have the power to fight back against these things that we see, this evil and corruption we see.
There's this video that the Trump, and I don't mean to make this about Trump, I really don't, other than to make this point. There's a video that the Trump people put out, and it was narrated by Tucker Carlson. And I think the narration is taken from his interview with Trump and the setup in the interview. And in Tucker's narration, it was a campaign video for Trump, and it was saying that, talking about what the enthusiasm is for Trump. And that people that are enthusiastic about Trump are enthusiastic about him even in spite of himself. They love him anyway, and it's because they feel he loves them too, whereas elites despise them. And I think that is maybe that's not a profound point anymore, but I still think it's one that a lot of people miss. Voters don't feel like there are many people that actually give a damn about them. That's the point.
I think that's definitely true, and it's why the populist message, the very common man type of message of Trump, resonated with so many people. Why is it that in 2016 and 2020, it was both Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders who were the top guys that people liked? Bernie Sanders, although he's a far-left socialist, he appealed to the common man. He appealed to the people who the elites and the bureaucrats had taken advantage of. So people saw him as someone who was defending the common man. That's why people liked him so much, and why people like Donald Trump for fighting for the common man. But you have all these elites, the Democrats and Republicans, wearing their khaki pants, going to the same political donor parties and trying to just do whatever it is to preserve themselves. It's why so many young people my age are apathetic about politics, because they just feel like the people don't care about them. Donald Trump showed that there are politicians who can care.
Is that why? I mean, my sons are going to be of voting age for the very first time in this presidential election cycle. And we don't talk a lot about politics. I mean, they know I'm a conservative. I think they lean that way, though, we don't sit around talking about candidates. But you know who interests them? And they've both said so. People like Vivek Murthy interest them, and RFK Jr., interestingly, interest them. Now, if I sat down and parsed all the politics of these men and their histories, I think maybe they'd come to different conclusions. But their messages are resonating with these young men, my sons. And I'm interested, because you're a younger guy, if you can look into why that is versus kind of your typical politician of a few decades whose name we already know.
Of course. I mean, look at RFK Jr. and everything that he did with COVID when it came to the vaccines, the masks, the mandates. I mean, he was at the front lines speaking against this stuff. I was with him. Excuse me. I was with him in Washington, D.C. at the first ever Defeat the Mandates rally with 25,000 people in attendance speaking with him about how bad this has gotten. You don't see politicians doing that. And if they do, they're giving some boilerplate type of, we got to fight, we got to do this. RFK Jr. came with facts. He came and said the government is selling you down the creek. He came and said what was really on people's minds. Now, RFK Jr., when it comes to climate change, when it comes to abortion, not my cup of tea, not my guy. But there are certain things that when you hear someone like him speak, you think, this guy cares about the issues that he's talking about. He really believes the issues that he is talking about. He's not some Kevin McCarthy, and you hear him talk, and you're like, well, why is he saying this? There's a reason why he's saying this. It feels unnatural. But for someone like RFK Jr., someone like Trump, you feel, wow, this person is saying this because they really believe it.
And you really do see and sense media and political figures hate them for it. You hear it. There's a venom, a personal contempt that Democrats have for RFK and Republicans have for Trump. There's, a visceral contempt. You can see it.
Yeah, well, you're supposed to play by the game. These people have set up rules, how you're supposed to act, how you're supposed to apologize to the media, how you're supposed to talk to candidates, how you're supposed to go around and knock on doors, like all these things. They are rules, unspoken rules that politicians are supposed to live by. We have elevated these politicians, these nonsensical people, to the level of celebrity instead of public servant. You are supposed to be a public servant. Our tax dollars pay your salary. Hence, you are my employee, Kevin McCarthy. You are not some celebrity in the tabloids trying to get people to notice you. That's not what this is about. This is about being a public servant, and we've forgotten that. And I think the politicians that resonate with people are the people who come in and say, I want to do a service.
Will Witt is editor-in-chief of the Florida Standard, author of a brand new book called Do Not Comply, Taking Power Back from America's Corrupt Elite. I think a lot about young people, and there are a few things that Democrats seem to really be pushing right now. One is obviously the abortion thing. I think it's just the overturning of Roe versus Wade, handing that back to the states as an issue was a bit, I say it's a bit like the dog catching the wheel of the car. Republicans have wanted it for a long time, or have claimed to anyway, have it now, and seem a little scattered as to what to do about it. And everything I'm to read and understand is a lot of young people are now deeply agitated, and it's turning young people out in droves, and we've already seen it in a couple of off-year elections. Can young people be brought home on that issue for conservatives, do you think, or no?
I think it's actually a split. I think that young conservative men can. Polls show that young conservative men care more about social conservatism than even economic conservatism. But the problem is with the ladies. The problem is with girls. Girls view abortion and the abortion issue as a whole as not a human life issue. They view it as a woman's rights issue. The left has so skewed the debate around abortion and basically made it that we're arguing on nonsensical grounds that Republicans and conservatives don't really know how to even battle most of these ideas, because they are viewing it from a way that is trying to debate the woman's rights issue. But it's not a woman's rights issue. It's a human life issue. And so young women have really latched onto this. And essentially, abortion is the calling card of leftist young women in this country.
Here's another one that may seem kind of silly, but I actually think there's a there, and that's this dress code thing that's just come up with guys like Fetterman wearing basketball shorts and hoodies. I actually think the Democrats delight in having a debate about how people dress in 2023, because I think they think even that falls on their side. You agree or disagree with that assessment?
I think so. I think one of the things that's very important is that the left loves chaos. Democrats love chaos. Yep. However they can create chaos to divide people, where the Republicans can't find any sort of unity amongst themselves and the left are just reveling in the chaos, they will do. This is a chaotic move by them to bring further disorder into something that should be a prideful thing that you do. I mean, look, you have had members of Congress before had horrible accidents, have strokes, have all sorts of things. They still dress up for the job. To think that there's any sort of excuse for this is nonsensical. But again, it is the left trying to put chaos into our world in a place where we need order now more than ever.
Do you have a magic bullet? I'll close with this, Will Witt. I know you need to run. Do Not Comply is the book, Taking Back Power from America's Corrupt Elite. Is there a magic bullet there? Certainly you got to talk about voting, harvesting votes, early voting, playing their game. I mean, don't hate the player, hate the game, as they say, right? You got to get that done. For conservatives, what do you say? What's the message?
I'm going to give you something a little bit more philosophical than as much practical, because I think this is at the root of everything, and that is integrity and purpose. Young people nowadays don't have purpose in their lives. They don't really have a lot of meaning. They don't have any sort of adventure or quest that they have in their lives. They grow up in some urban city where they're told that they get a trophy just for breathing. The boys are told that girl behaviors are good and they should act more like girls. They go to college where they spend tons and tons of money and just engage in every vice imaginable. And so they lack really any sort of meaning in their lives. That's where leftism comes in and says, hey, we can give you this new religion of leftism and you can make this all about how you're supposed to live your life. And people latch onto it. Young people latch onto it. We as conservatives need to develop a plan that actually gives meaning to the lives of people in this country. Not just, here's why we're going to stop illegal immigration. Here's why our tax policy is good. We need something that says, hey, this is going to make your life better. This is going to make you fulfilled as a human being. Now, only God can do that truly, but I think that conservatives and Republicans need to work on that messaging to really bring people over to their side.
Smart. And our churches, which is a separate issue, but equally as important. Will Witt, editor-in-chief of the Florida Standard. Thank you so much for your time today, sir. Good luck with the book called Do Not Comply. We appreciate you.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.